It's America's most passionate music, rooted in Africa but brought to blossom at the dawn of the 20th century. It is a living heritage, born in poverty, born of love and love betrayed, of pleasure and pain, despair and pure joy. It is the blues. Sown in the rich soil of the cotton fields of the Mississippi Delta are the seeds of a unique American art form. The blues have evolved from the oceans of land that stretch out endlessly toward the horizon. Hello, I'm Bill Boggs, in the birthplace of the blues, a place worth visiting for every historic traveler. We're going on a lyrical pilgrimage through the Mississippi Delta to Greenville, Clarksdale, north to Memphis, and all the way to the rise of rock and roll. The history of blues music is intertwined with the history of America. The 20s, 30s, and 40s were a bittersweet period of transition from slavery to sharecropping, from farming to factories. But with progress comes pain, and in this pain lies the soul of the blues. The names and sounds of the masters like Robert Johnson, Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, and Son House echo from the farms and shanties in the land they call home. Theirs are the voices that rise from the cotton fields. We'll follow in their footsteps, in the footsteps of legends. Along Highways 61 and 49, the historic roads traveled by those who lived and played the blues. It's a journey as much in spirit as it is in miles. The Mississippi Delta is approximately 200 miles of low, flat plain running from Vicksburg to Memphis, bounded by the Mississippi River to the west and the Yazoo River to the east. For as long as anyone can remember, people have called it the Delta, despite the fact that it's nowhere near the mouth of any river. But the Delta isn't about geography, it's about the blues. The first stop for the blues traveler is in Greenville, one of the few cities in the Delta. Since the early days, the best and sometimes only place to find the blues has been in small makeshift clubs called juke joints. Jim O'Neill owns the Mississippi record label Rooster Blues and is also one of the founding editors of Living Blues magazine. He knows the juke joints around Mississippi better than almost anyone. Jim, what's the significance of the juke joint in the birth of the blues?
Well, the juke joints were among the first places that blues were played, and originally juke joints were houses on the plantations where the field hands would gather, and it was like a house party. And over the years, the juke joints kind of moved to town, and today it's kind of synonymous with a funky nightclub, which could be in town or out in the country. But they've still been the main places for blues to be performed for a lot of people here in the South.
In Greenville, the juke joints line Nelson Street. They say that when you're on Nelson, you're as deep in the blues as you can get. The neighborhood can be a little rough at night, so be alert and keep your wits about you. And it's a good idea to stay in the clubs. That's where the real action is anyway. For years, the heart of the blues in Greenville and maybe all of the Delta has been Perry's Flowing Fountain. Like a window to the soul of the blues, Perry's has seen it all. Albert King, Little Milton, B.B. King, and Ray Charles have all graced the stage. Tonight, it's local legend Willie Foster and his band. Willie himself has played with some of the greats, like Muddy Waters. For $3, we're given passage to a night of old-style blues. Like many jukes, Perry's doesn't have live music every night, so make sure you schedule your juke joint jaunts for Friday or Saturday, or call ahead. Like the generations of blues musicians who followed, visitors to the Delta are drawn to the haunted story of Robert Johnson. Johnson's search to escape his dismal existence in the early 30s led him deep into the Delta. And we follow him. From Greenville, we head out into the heart of the Delta. South of Greenwood, there are not one but two memorials to Robert Johnson. But if there's a blues singer who deserves to be immortalized, it's Johnson. His moving lyrics and tragic death transcended his short life.
He was not only a great singer, poet, songwriter, and musician, but he was really a kind of almost a mythological figure, the way we think of him today, because his life and death were surrounded in mystery.
As legend has it, a young Robert Johnson was ridiculed one night for his clumsy guitar play. Embarrassed, he left in disgust. Later that night, he came upon a deserted crossroads where under a tree he saw a shadowy figure.
Was the wind howling? Was it a rainy night? We do know this. Robert Johnson would give anything to master the guitar, even sell his soul to the devil. Now, he would later say that since the music already possessed him, he was giving up something that wasn't even his. Whether fact or fiction, myth or mystery, the story of Robert Johnson captures our imagination.
Clarksdale sits at the crossroads of Highway 61 and 49. Some of the people who have lived in Clarksdale include Son House, Charlie Patton, and a boy who got his nickname from the times he would go fishing and get real dirty. His name was McKinley Morganfield, but everybody called him Muddy. Muddy Waters. A photograph of the shack where he grew up hangs in the Delta Blues Museum in Clarksdale, located on the second floor of the Carnegie Public Library. The museum honors the blues with a surprising collection of artifacts and some just plain neat stuff. On one wall is a sign from the Three Forks store where Robert Johnson died in 1938 at the hands of a jealous husband. Across the room is a Muddy Wood, a guitar constructed by the rock group ZZ Top from the planks that made up Muddy's shack. The Crossroads Club is a throwback. It's a thriving juke joint with live music Thursday through Sunday, and on the other nights you never know when an impromptu jam session might bring down the house. James Super Chicken Johnson is a performer who embodies the Delta Blues musician. He's Clarksdale's link to the past. The museum and the clubs make Clarksdale a place the Delta Blues can call home. Our travel to the birthplace of the blues takes us toward the Tennessee line and a southern centerpiece. The city of Memphis sits perched on bluffs overlooking the mighty Mississippi.
Like a river delta in reverse, Memphis has reaped the rewards of the northward flow of the blues. From the beginning, blues musicians have left their sharecropping shacks and come here to seek their fame and fortune.
Fabled Highway 61 runs north, turns into 3rd Street, and heads right into Memphis, right into Beale Street. Everyone who could scrape together a few dollars cutting cotton or working in the mills would converge here at night.
Today, you can visit that Beale Street starting at B.B. King's Club. B.B. was just a poor kid with a couple of bucks in his pocket when he first came to Memphis shortly after World War II. When he opened this club in 1991, he was one of the most celebrated blues artists in history.
For a small cover charge, you can enjoy some of the best blues on Beale, or try out a Lucille burger named for BB's famed guitar. Just down the street is the Center for Southern Folklore, where Judy Pizer is the executive director. The center is a nonprofit institution that documents the grassroots culture of the South through films, records, oral histories, and festivals. On Beale Street, that often means the blues.
Judy, how much is music an important part of what you're doing at the center?
Music is really one of the major focuses of the Center for Southern Folklore. We celebrate artists, craftspeople, and especially musicians who, through their music, sort of describe the South, whether it's gospel, rockabilly, soul, or blues. And then almost every night you can hear music like Big Lucky and his Mighty Men of Sound, or Mose Vincent playing the piano and L.T. Lewis on drums.
Mose Vincent has earned the label Living Legend. Born in Mississippi, he's been playing the piano professionally since the 1930s. He's worked the jukes and on Beale. In the late 40s, he picked up a few gigs with the young B.B. King. Now he's a regular at the center, where he gives guests a taste of old-style blues piano.
Thank you very much.
Despite the reputation as a street that never sleeps, some visitors to Beale do catch a few winks. For nearly 70 years, the Peabody has been Memphis's most elegant hotel. Just a couple blocks off Beale, the Peabody is best known for its marching ducks that descend every day from their penthouse digs to play in the lobby. An historian has written that the Delta begins in the lobby of the Peabody Hotel. Several popular Delta blues artists have recorded at the hotel. For the blues artists of the first half of the 20th century, the road to success more often than not ran through Beale Street. Today it has become America's blues alley. We continue our journey through the blues country in Memphis, Tennessee. Muddy Waters once sang that the blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll. Well, many say that baby was born in Memphis. The city acted as an incubator for the ingredients of great music. The combination of these melodic and cultural forces broke down barriers between races, between genres, between the city and the country. Together they would change American music forever. They would produce music the likes of which had never been heard before, and create stars who reached unbelievable heights. One of the Memphis rock and rollers who leapt onto the bandstand and into the nation's consciousness was Carl Perkins. Mixing the blues with honky-tonk, Carl was one of the first to brew that potent concoction called rock and roll. The sound of rock and roll was original, but certainly not exclusive. At the time that Carl was playing this new breed of music, Sam Phillips was opening a recording studio at 706 Union Avenue in Memphis. It would soon become the famed Sun Studio. Phillips was intent on recording blues musicians from Memphis. One of the first to step up to the mic was that Riley King character that everyone called BB. Today, fans can pay homage to the roots of rock and roll at 706 Union by touring the old Sun Studio. At night, the room is transformed back into a working studio.
Come on in. Here we are, the birthplace of rock and roll.
Both the musicians who record here and the guests who take the tour get to experience the Sun sound, the sound of rock and roll.
For many, the quintessential voice of rock and roll came from a painfully shy young man from Tupelo who first set foot in Sun Studio in 1953 and sang into this microphone. His name was Elvis Presley.
Like the black blues artists who had gone before him, Elvis knew that this was his shot at escaping a bleak future. He got his chance when Sam Phillips put out Elvis's first single, Sun 209, That's All Right, and on the flip side, Blue Moon of Kentucky. Rock and roll had been born and was quickly coming of age. That was no more evident than in 1956 at what was dubbed the $1 Million Quartet. That jam session at Sun featured Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Carl Perkins.
Jerry was on the piano. Cash was just sitting in there while I was recording. And in walked Elvis right in the middle of the session. And of course everything stopped. And Elvis sat down at the piano and we started singing.
By the time of that recording, Elvis was on his way to becoming a rock and roll icon. His songs were burning up the charts, and so was a song by Carl Perkins called Blue Suede Shoes.
I had never owned a pair of blue suede shoes, and I was playing this club here in town, and I heard a boy tell a girl, said, don't step on my suede. I said, whoa. I went home that night, and I laid down, and I couldn't get it off my mind. So I took a brown paper bag, and I wrote blue, S-W-A-D-E, shoes. So I got my guitar, and I said, well, it's 1 for the money, dum, dum, 2 for the shows, dum, dum.
3 to get ready now, go back home, don't you? Never my blue suede shoes.
The song was a huge hit, and only Elvis's single Heartbreak Hotel kept Blue Suede Shoes from the top of the Billboard charts. Carl Perkins and Elvis were linked forever by the music of rock and roll, by Sun Studio, and by Memphis. By 1957, Elvis had become a huge sensation and was touring the continent, but he always came home to Memphis. And after 1957, he always had a place to come home to, Graceland.
Graceland sits on the outskirts of Memphis on Elvis Presley Boulevard. Every year, hundreds of thousands of fans come to these gates to pay tribute to the king of rock and roll.
Tours are available for $9 and include an audio presentation that features commentary and music from Elvis.
These things really come in handy. I found out that Elvis loved Graceland so much that he loved showing it off to guests room by room. In fact, he was considered Graceland's original tour guide.
Walking through Graceland is like slipping back in time to 1977. Times have changed, but Graceland hasn't. The tour takes you through the rooms that were Elvis's pride and joy. If one room at Graceland stands out, it's the Jungle Room. The waterfall, the fake fur furniture, and the green shag on the ceiling reminded Elvis of one of his favorite spots, Hawaii. Elvis also realized that the carpeting made the room's acoustics good enough for jam sessions and recording. In this very room in 1976, Elvis recorded the album From Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee. The highlight of the Graceland tour for many fans is the trophy room. With its awards, costumes, and guitars, the room is more than a collection of memorabilia. It tells the story of Elvis's life and career. It's the legacy of Elvis Presley. He rode the rock and roll revolution to the top. His tragic death at Graceland in 1977 shocked the world, and legions of his fans have come to Graceland ever since to pay their respects in the Meditation Garden. It's a fitting tribute to the man they call the king of rock and roll. Elvis's death brought the end of an era, and Graceland is a fitting end to our journey through the birth of the blues. The roots of the blues are so deep that they reach out and pull us toward the history of a culture, a people, and a time that's told in the lyrics and on the strings of a guitar. This journey through music history should take a week to 10 days, But it's best when you let the music be your guide. Sometimes that means planning your trip around festivals and weekends. There are also some other places to soak up the history of American popular music. You could start your trip about 250 miles south of the Delta in New Orleans, where you can explore the origins of jazz. On the other end, you could extend your trip from Memphis to Nashville, the home of country music and the Grand Ole Opry.
But the best thing about this trip is it doesn't really matter where it begins or ends. The stops along the way, whether it's big Graceland or some little juke joint, are merely guideposts to the poetry, the music, and the history that lie beneath them. I'm Bill Boggs. Thanks for joining me on Historic Traveler.